Hello everyone, what's up? We're
Huh?
live. Johannes, we're live. I already pressed it when you said
Nice. Welcome everyone. I want to do something really cool now. Let's see if it works.
ahead.
Like,
What's up everyone? Nice to have you join. Please like the video and share the link. And Johannes, feel free to share whatever you need with the audience for a few minutes while I try to share the stream, the X link as well. Guys,
very good. We're also streaming.
The Frankencoin weekly live stream, not exactly weekly yet, but we're slowly getting there. I'm here with Johannes, our managing director at the Frankencoin Association. Always an honor, always a pleasure. I'm the advisor, and we're actually here to get some updates about what's going on with Frankencoin and how it's getting apparently bigger and bigger, and hopefully get some notes from Johannes about recent visit at Consensus at Hong Kong. He actually told me that it was quite interesting with a lot of developments. And Johannes, apologize to cut you off there. Just wanted to say hi to everyone. And please, by the way, guys, subscribe to the channels, like the stream, join our community on Telegram and all that great stuff. Johannes, what were you saying before I wanted to get into the intro, by the way?
Basically, so I was just quickly trying to get it to run as well on the video stream in our Telegram group. Doesn't seem to work. I also had to quickly adjust camera settings, but hey, everyone, thank you so much.
We can try to do it next time in advance on Restream.
Yes,
we should do it.
Planning is the mother of, what was it? But anyways, thank you so much, all of you,
of success.
Exactly, for joining. I'm not sure how big of a lag we have.
What do you mean lag?
Because we're crossing each other talking, but maybe it's just the two of us being super excited about being in here. Thanks so much for coming on. On this really cool channel. Actually, we want to make this a bit of a habit, right? We want to have a very direct line with the community. We know we have a very active community. The ones which are in our Telegram have seen that happening, especially over the last weekend. It was quite impressive to see from kind of the association perspective. I'm doing this daily, right? It's my Frankencoin is my daily business, but seeing so many people engaged and also emotionally involved in Frankencoin is something which is very nice to see, really. And we want to have this channel open. I want to share updates, things we're doing, things we're building, and just really answering your questions you might have. And obviously, we are always going to bring, one other person on stage. We've had Lucius and Eric with us last time. There was a super interesting conversation. Today's just going to be the two of us. Maybe someone commenting as well. We'll see. So as always, post your questions on whatever channel you're watching us. Happy to address them, and in the meanwhile, I'll happily give you a bit of an update of what we're actually working on. And there's a bunch of really, really big things coming. Some connected to what I've been doing in Hong Kong last week. Some a bit longer in the making. So where should we start, the advisor? He's still setting up the X post, I think. So
one now, and then after I press it, it like it starts it comes back with the sound of the stream itself, so it got mixed there. Apologize.
But yeah, let me. If you're still setting up stuff and getting everyone to join
Where
here.
do you want to start?
I can start with the obvious one, right? Hong Kong. I went for Consensus.
Actually, I'm very excited to learn about how Hong Kong was for you.
I'd argue it's reflective of the industry state we're in. Hong Kong was a lot less hypey, I would argue, than other conferences I've recently been to. It's been a bit more somber, maybe you could argue. But for me, it was really good because what this allowed me to do is kind of really just go, with the flow, step by step. I basically spent the whole week in kind of informal type of meetings where I would, have coffee with people, and then other people would join, and um, then the next person would come, and you just go there the whole time. I was just like seeing what the hell you're putting here on the screen. So many things. um, so it was just a lot of informal conversations. We were looking, and this is a bit of a change, maybe. So the ones who've seen me at those conferences know that I'm really the one selling the Swiss franc, and this is also which I'm really excited about. So I go out there and I talk about Switzerland. I talk about Swiss culture. I talk about why this is the most stable currency in the world. And now I was doing something else as well, and this something else is actually super important because that even started before my excursion to Hong Kong, where I was in Switzerland. I was supposed to take a couple of days off and be skiing with my family, but instead of doing that, basically we spent the whole week making sure that the Frankencoin would not depeg, and that is a good thing in this case, because what was happening is that the dollar was going to shit, and we have seen these massive inflows of or into Frankencoin. And obviously, to do that, you need to make sure that there's enough collateral. There's actually enough Frankencoin being minted. Coordinating with different people, with investors, with market makers, with exchanges, just to keep that price at that sweet 1 Swiss franc. And we don't want to go it higher, we don't want to go it lower, we just want to stay at this 1 Swiss franc price. I think we've managed it quite all right. Obviously, in between as the volumes grow bigger and the whole mass of the system becomes bigger, right? Talking about 70 million TVL. That becomes much less of an issue because you just have a lot more kind of buffer and mass you can play around with. So I spent, and much to the chagrin of my chancla wielding wife, I spent a lot of time on the phone, chatting to different people, and also this is kind of this other thing where in Hong Kong I now not only had a Swiss franc to sell, but I was also having many meetings and conversations with investors. And what is it that we're looking for, really? What we want, and as I said, please post your questions. I think we already have some coming in slowly, but if you're curious about something, just ask away. We can also get you on stage if need be. But what we're looking for to really scale Frankencoin is massive collaterals, and I've mentioned that in the past, and this is just maybe a good point to kind of repeat that, where traditional CDPs such as MakerDAO or Liquidity, they are very secure. They have one Achilles heel though, and that Achilles heel is if the whole market starts correlating heavily and drops immediately. And that's why they need to have over collateralization. That's why they need to have these very quick liquidations also to absorb this. And how Frankencoin is built, we don't have this exposure to those very quick liquidations. And because of that, we can have a wider variety of collaterals, which might not be immediately liquid, but eventually liquid. And they have one very, very big advantage. And that big advantage is, I'm talking about RWAs here, right? Non-crypto assets. They are such as BOSS. I know BOSS was a big topic in the community in the last couple of days. They have one big advantage, and this is they are less correlated. They're still usually a bit correlated to the market, but they're a lot less correlated than crypto, such as Bitcoin or Ethereum, are intercorrelated in between them, especially in fast drops. And this makes the system a lot more secure, but this also allows us to actually grow and grow it more efficiently. So when I'm saying this, what is my perfect collateral? And it doesn't exist yet. Maybe it doesn't exist at all. My perfect collateral is a Swiss franc denominated asset that has no volatility and yields about 3 to 4%. If you find this, hey, look, I'm your biggest friend. I do not think it exists, to be very honest, because there's a reason why those basically low vol assets have such a low yield as well in Swiss francs. But yeah, I mean, long story short, right? I had many conversations about exactly this same topic in Hong Kong, where I was talking to family offices, talking to also foundations. I was talking to companies specializing in treasury management of large foundations about how we can work together and actually onboard them also as collateral into Frankencoin. So that's really the story about what I was doing in Hong Kong, and that's one part of those really cool things that are happening. You're on mute, by the way. Feels like we're in a Zoom call and we don't know what the fuck we're doing, are we?
As always. What would you say interests these like you said, family office, foundations, and all these folks that you've met in Hong Kong, for example? What specifically about Frankencoin interests them? Like, what's the big selling point of Frankencoin, and what actually makes it, in your mind, like you said, as the one actually doing the work of preaching it and selling it out there to the world? What actually makes it so attractive to them?
That depends. That depends, right? There is some people who have cost in Swiss franc, who might have, for example, a foundation in Switzerland. So they anyways have to have Swiss franc, so it makes a lot of sense for them. There's others who are currently not on the big platforms because of whatever reason it might be. For example, on Aave or on Morpho. There's others, once again, who find it interesting to be able to short the Swiss franc, right? Who believe that the market might go the other way and they want to build something with that. And then there's other ones who see the nominally very low interest rates and basically just feel this is a very attractive deal to be able to borrow against. So there's really, that depends on who it is. That which to their need, really. But those are the ones, probably it's the availability, cost in Swiss francs or expense in Swiss francs, and actually thinking in Swiss franc, low interest rates, as well as the ability to short that Swiss franc, if you want to sum it up.
Let's touch on what you said earlier about the types of collateral that you're looking. Like, you say that basically you're looking for an asset or assets, actually, denominated in Swiss francs, as stable as possible, and yielding 3 or 4% a year.
I mean, this is just the perfect case, right? This is the perfect case.
It only reminds me of one thing about it reminds me of Frankencoin itself, but it can't be its own collateral. So I actually want to ask you, what are like the closest thing that you can imagine? Like, for example, stocks who are traded in Switzerland, who are very stable, basically?
Probably not stocks, probably more kind of bonds we're talking about. Or real estate. Real estate is a big one, right? If we can somehow get the kind of big mass of tokenized real estate, or commercial real estate probably would be the one. That's a big one, right? Now that the beauty of Switzerland is you have the legal framework to do so, but to make it work, because you still, the issue always comes down to cost. You need to have tokenization which is comparable in cost to what you would be able to do in the traditional world. So you need a certain mass, a certain size to be able to pull that off. I believe that we are slowly getting into this territory where we can actually make that work. So there's a bunch of projects going on this behind the scenes. They're not kind of super advanced yet, but that's definitely something which we're also working on. But then also there's other things, right? You might have seen there is a big discussion on the GitHub forum about adding dollars, adding in USDC, USDT, or yielding dollar as a collateral. Now the use case here would not necessarily be as much one of kind of long-term holding, but what it allows you to build trading strategies around it. Because in fact it gives you a tool to go short very easily dollar, or to work with interest rate differences. Where if you have like a very highly yielding dollar, or you can get that somewhere, you can loop that. Those kind of products. Now we'll see where that takes. I think the discussion is still not done, and no one has proposed it so far. At least maybe that will come soon. Maybe someone from the community will just said, "Hey, you know what? I have a lot of USDC. I actually want to do that step and propose it as a collateral." Now, I mean, maybe
can you maybe show us this on screen, the discussion on the forum?
Sure.
And feel free, by the way, to also share your opinion about some of the proposed assets. I saw that there's a big discussion regarding where to go with yield-bearing stablecoins, or just like the naked versions of like the stablecoins themselves, because I know that maybe, if I understood correctly from what I've seen there, it also in a way adds some smart contract risk when you take it to the yield bearing aspect, for example, or like stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, it does definitely, right? It's a layer on top, and that is not per se a problem. It's just a part of the discussion which needs to be had on, like, what is the risk reward profile you want. I find the idea kind of interesting. I mean, I would also thinking that there could be both in coexistence. There is no reason for not doing that, because they're different beasts. Obviously, what it basically means is that, and this is just like the discussion which is going on. I'm personally, as I said, I'm very supportive of it, because I think it's a one other tool which we can use to build games. And Sam, who actually puts it very nicely, that in DeFi, it's all about games. What kind of games can you play with a certain asset, and that is driving adoption, that is driving usage. So if we scroll down here a bit, there's discussions about and USDT versus USDC. I'm not in a place to judge this. I would probably even make the other. Yeah, it's actually good comment here. Where maybe a bit of inside knowledge, or not even inside, it's public knowledge, but USDC almost took MakerDAO down with it, because MakerDAO became very much dependent on USDC, and then the SEC shut down the what's it called? A bank in Silicon Valley Bank, which was a treasury of basically USDC, and the USDC depacked and almost took MakerDAO down with him.
Because of, by the way, just to ask, because of how the Frankencoin protocol is structured, I'm pretty sure that this will be much more better gated if it's actually onboarded on Frankencoin, right? Because
not necessarily, because what happened with MakerDAO is that they used it as a bit like we use VNX VCHF, but VCHF is obviously tiny. So VCHF is, I think, 0.2% of all the assets. So there's like no impact whatsoever. The difference was it was 80% of the assets were kind of bridged to or were backed by USDC.
That's what I mean. Like with Frankencoin, this will never be allowed, I guess.
I mean, that's part of the community, right? That's part of risk management. But then on the other side, you have to be aware that in bear markets, it might very well be that there is no demand for borrowing, but a massive demand for the Frankencoin itself, which we've seen in the last couple of weeks, and that's where MakerDAO basically went the way that they kind of allowed this to blow up more and more and more. And what they did not do is they did not kind of deploy that smartly. They've now done that into RWAs. So they basically used this USDC they had, and they invested this in tokenized government bonds, basically, which are yield generating. And this is kind of the way you'd have to go, or you have to go once you are in this situation where you have this massive growth, but you need to back it up on the other side with some kind of assets. And this is actually a very good comment, because you might have read about, and basically now going away from the USDC topic here, you might have read about the proposed or announced Swiss Franc stablecoin by AllUnity. It's called CHFAU, and it's a centralized Swiss Franc stablecoin. It can't be in Switzerland because you cannot issue Swiss Franc stablecoin in Switzerland. Sorry, you cannot issue Swiss Franc stablecoins in Switzerland. But they are doing this under Mika from Germany. Obviously, there's a lot of kind of weird overhead, and I'm not sure how they're making a business model out of it. But for us, this is really great because we can use this CHFAU as a direct kind of entry point. And it's not live yet. So I don't know the exact specification, but if it is a permissionless stablecoin, then we can use this quite nicely also to have a nice kind of in and out route for Frankencoin to scale the system and to make it more flexible and quicker.
Can you elaborate on how?
With a bridge. So basically what you do, you allow people to mint Frankencoin using this other stablecoin, and then you have a direct connection because you can use kind of the fiat rails if you're KYC and to mint and redeem through them. So you can then basically, let's say you have very big demand. What you would then do, you go in, let's say you mint 10 million with Swiss francs, which you get because you can just sell them on the market, and you mint directly Frankencoins. You don't have to borrow, but you mint, and then you can take this money and you put it into, it somewhat turns into protocol-owned liquidity, if you will. And the other way around, if people want to go out and go into fiat very quickly, they can onboard with AllUnity. They can do kind of a DD and KYC and whatnot, and then they can literally just send their Frankencoin to this bridge, get the AUCHF out, and redeem them against Swiss francs. So it just creates another peg or connection to the fiat rails. And the first one, which actually Frankencoin had, was the XCHF, which was the Bitcoin Swiss issued one. That was phased out because the FINMA made it impossible to have centralized stablecoins in Switzerland. We replaced that then with VCHF, but the problem with VCHF right now is that there's very little liquidity available, so we can't really scale that. It's there, but it's very, very small. And now if we have AllUnity CHF, that might actually solve quite a bit of a problem, or not a problem, a challenge we have. Made the system, it makes it more snappy, it makes it better scalable, it makes it more stable in the end. You have a better Swiss franc price because you have more arbitrage opportunities to go from fiat to on-chain Swiss francs.
By the way, for those who aren't familiar, can you maybe in a few words explain what FINMA is and what its approach for it? Like maybe why they take that stance of not allowing centralized stablecoins?
Sure. I mean, let me quickly answer the question, Michael's question here. So he asked, is that like the Euro does with the EuroC? Exactly. It's the same code. I mean, DAdvisoor is a fork of Frankencoin. There is one
Let me just read the questions. Would it be like DEuro does with EURC? So if you can also explain what DEuro does with EURC for everyone to catch up, will be great.
Okay, I mean, let me start. So DEuro is initially was a fork of Frankencoin, changed certain parts of the code, but it's at its core, it's a very similar system. And what they do is that you basically can take EURC, send them to DEuro, and you mint euros or DEuros with it, and vice versa. Same thing, exactly same thing. It's the same code. Now the difference here is a bit that what happened with the DEuro is, and this is maybe a part of kind of risk management, and maybe we should actually get someone from DEuro in here to comment on that themselves, because I'm just seeing it from the outside, is this can only always be a smaller part of the whole system, especially if you're paying high yield, because this money which you put in is EURC, you put in, you don't pay an interest for that. So when you borrow money, using a collateral, you're paying an interest, and you create income for the system, which is in the case of Frankencoin, but also in the case of DEuro, gets paid out on the other side as savings. Now, when obviously suddenly 90% of the system is minted through this bridge and is not minted through the actual yield bearing or yield creating collateral, you at some point either have to lower the yield substantially, because you need to create that somehow, or you run into issues. So that's it's a fine balance. So that's also why in the case of Frankencoin, there's those two different rates. You have if you dive into the system, you have the borrowing rate, which is one rate, and you have the savings rate, and they are adjustable independently because they need to adapt to those reality on how a system is being used. So to get back to your question, DAdvisoor, I mean, what's FINMA's stance? FINMA has, since basically I would argue the downfall or the liquidation of Credit Suisse, has very much gone into a stance of not allow any risks, and basically keep things as they are in a sense, and try to focus on the large market participants, on the large banks, and have as little kind of new innovation. And there's actually been let me find that quickly for you. There's been a big article about it in Bilanz, and the largest or one of the largest 4 days ago. Let me share that with you. Right. So there was this big article. It's actually the title page on bilanz.ch, how this regulation was not too well kind of taken up by the industry, because it's just very prohibitive. Now, how this kind of turn, or this means for crypto is that they in 2024, summer 24, they issued this statement where they basically said that if you want to issue a centralized stablecoin, you need to have a bank license, and anyone who would hold that stablecoin would be your client and need to be onboarded as your client, and that kind of made all the stablecoins non-transferable. Now, there is right now an ongoing legal discussion about a proposed new law. There is no regulation for it in Switzerland, right? There's even, Frankencoin is fully compliant because it's decentralized. We're not holding a Swiss francs, or the association is not issuing Frankencoins. It's a decentralized system, and that's why it's compliant, but it's not regulated because there is no way to get regulated in Switzerland as for now. Now, there is this proposed law, which was very recently in its consultation phase, which finished, I think, 2 weeks ago or a week ago. And we believe that's going to take a while. And there is the proposed law right now is very restrictive. Now we'll see where it takes us. It's a very interesting discussion, which is happening in Bern on a political level regards to that. But that's kind of the stance of FINMA, and we'll see. I mean, we're very open. We're in open communication. Also, we are super compliant in any aspect. Working. There's this term in German called vorauseilender Gehorsam, where you basically actually do more than you have to do, and basically just trying to do the right thing on all aspects. And that is what from the association is what we're doing as well, because the Frankencoin itself, as I said, it's a decentralized system. We don't control it. But we're obviously we're taking all the steps we can to have it decentralized as well. Even more decentralized, and that means having more people with veto powers. You might have seen 2 weeks ago where we did a bit of reshuffling of not we, there are some investors, me as well, at the association as well, but some of the larger holders of FPS, they actually burned some of their own voting power to have it more decentralized. And this is maybe a question or like an ask to this whole community in here. Become part of that community, become a token holder, become FPS holder, be active in the community, be active as also vetoing. And we've been very positively surprised on that. I mean, I from the association, we intentionally stayed very much on the sidelines on this whole GEM discussion. GEM, as people who are new to the community or have not seen that, GEM was or is a project which is tokenizing colored gemstones, and they proposed their token to be added to Frankencoin as a collateral. And this might have merit. I might argue. I think it's this very small project. It's a very illiquid project. But what surprised us, independent of the outcome, is the engaged discussion which came out of that. How actively the community, said, "Hey, look, this is very strong words. Some people use that. I'm not going to repeat them here, but there was very good questions. There was very good analysis as well of those proposals." And it finally ended with some holder. We don't know who that was. It was not the association. Well, the association doesn't vote anyways, right? We do have tokens, but we don't use those to vote. Someone of the community decided to veto the proposal, and that is super like the outcome you want, right? It's exactly this. Decentralization works, the community works, and this is you people. This is you people being part of Frankencoin and making up Frankencoin. But then the next steps obviously is my ask here is, hey, also become part of it as FPS holders. Have a wholesome FPS, use those to vote, voice your opinion.
That actually leads me to another topic that I think it will be good if we discuss a bit. Let me try also and share the screen, because we've actually published this week another introductory series article, and it's about FPS, to be honest. They will be actually great if you can share a few words, first of all, about FPS, what it is, because I know that many people, they are familiar with ZCHF, which is the actual product of Frankencoin, bringing Swiss Franc stablecoins to the world and allowing access to this very much in-demand asset, but it actually all becomes possible in the Frankencoin protocol and system because of the design and how FPS, the Frankencoin pool shares, are involved and affect the protocol. So we've written this one. You can find it on our X. given some clarity on how it works. And I'm actually think it will be great if you can elaborate a bit on the roles of FPS, and especially the very unique governance method that it provides. Because you just mentioned it earlier with the veto model, so maybe you can share a few words for those who aren't familiar. Maybe there are some people who aren't familiar with that on the community.
Sure. I'll happy to do that. Let me actually share my screen to do that. Now,
Go ahead.
let's first turn you off here. Basically, FPS is, as you very rightly said, a second part. So, in one hand side, we have the Frankencoin, the CCHF, which is the stablecoin. And then you have the FPS, which is the governance token on the other side. And this FPS has a bunch of different things it does, right? Thing number one, it's a bit like the tier one equity of a bank. So your Frankencoin you hold, the CCHF you hold, they are obviously secured by over-collateralization, by over-collateralized assets, which are liquidated when they hit a certain threshold. Now, a liquidation always has the risk that it causes a loss for the system. Now, this loss, or mostly actually, if you look at it historically, in our case, I think all of the liquidations so far have made quite a bit of profit. I've created a Dune dashboard on that, by the way. This is brand new, but it's not been publicly announced yet, but we'll have that soon. If you really want it now, you can also text me and I can send it to you. It's just not, it's in beta, but build in public, right? We're all building in public, so I'm going to share it with you anyways. But basically what you have an equity pool, which is the money that is being paid in by people who are minting those FPS and all the incomes of the system. And if there's a loss in a liquidation, that's where this is paid off. So this, with FPS, those FPS holders, they are securing your bags, they're securing your Frankencoin as a further backstop after the liquidations. That's kind of number one. So I like tier one equity of a bank. The second use case is that of the governance token. And that is, you have three things in Frankencoin which you can change. You can change the collaterals. You can propose new collaterals. That's the one which you're probably all familiar with, where there's proposed, anyone can propose, and then there's discussion, and if no one vetoes it, it goes through. The second one is the adjustments of interest rates. I've mentioned that before, right? We have two interest rates, the borrowing rate and the savings rate. Those can also be adjusted by anyone, or basically the adjustment can be proposed by anyone who has veto rights, with at least 2% or any group thereof with delegations. And the third use case is so-called minter proposals, where you can effectively add new smart contracts and new functionality to Frankencoin. So this is I'd argue the most powerful of the three. Once again, with basically these 2% veto rights. Now, this is important. So the veto, that is what you mentioned before, right? The DAdvisoor. That's kind of the biggie, where in many protocols you have these majority votes, and oftentimes it's only a very small percentage of the overall tokens that actually are voting. So this leads to very skewed results where big or large holders like Aave, the Aave Avara and the Aave Chang initiative, ACI, have big bags and have massive influence over the system. In Frankencoin, that's not the case, because in Frankencoin, anyone who has at least 2% basically has the same voting power. They can veto something. So the system in that sense is a lot more slow. Once again, you could argue changes are slower. But again, we've had this conversation about a year ago. I'm pretty sure most exactly a year ago with you, the DAdvisoor, about how the Swiss political system works. It's slow. It's a consensus-driven political system. And that's really what it is, right? Something can only be changed if almost everyone agrees and no one really has a problem with it. So that's where those 2% come in. That makes it a lot more decentralized. Right now, I think we have about 15 different wallets, or 16, probably even more now, because they've been a bunch burned, which have this 2% 2% threshold by themselves, and even a lot more of wallets which, if they join forces, which you can take this so-called delegate function, so you can kind of delegate your votes to someone else, that can veto any proposal made in the system. So this is number 2. Number 3 is, as I mentioned, any costs, but also any inflows or any income generated by the system. This is namely things like the fees, 1,000 Swiss francs you have to pay to create a proposal, but also gains from liquidations. But also, that's the biggest chunk, interest income also flows into this pool. And this pool is directly connected to the price of the FPS. So by being an FPS holder, you are directly profiting from the success of the system.
Meaning that you actually, like FPS in here presents that both the risk and the reward side of the equation.
Yeah. And funny enough, look, obviously it's a bit of a bad timing now, but looking at the market, FPS is one of the best performing cryptos out there, right? Full stop.
It's insane. It's insane.
And it's in that sense, it's the risk profile is super interesting, because you have this, obviously you are a bag holder of the system. When a system fails, you fail as well. But you have a very clear-cut business model behind it as well, where you see, okay, there's a bigger need for Frankencoin. There's more Frankencoins in existence, which are yielding or basically paying interest on their borrowing side. And you just directly profit off that. And this is perpetual, right? If let's make a very, very simple sum or calculation. Let's say you have 100 million with a margin of 2%, which is quite realistic. That creates 2 million income per year. Now, right now, there's about, I think, 4 million in that pool. That's a 50% increase per year. It's not a bad return, I would argue.
And that's in Swiss francs, by the way.
In Swiss francs, correct.
Which in the way people usually calculate percentage, if they actually compare it to the dollar, they will actually see that it's a lot more percent than 15, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I actually think that that's worth noting. Yeah, that's definitely something that you made me realize with time, that, yield paid in Swiss franc terms is not the same as yield paid in dollar terms.
Very much so. And there's actually been a lot of, so just today I was in Zug, and on the biggest newspaper in Zug, the title story was a big investor criticizing the Swiss National Bank, that they are kind of politically not allowing the Swiss franc to appreciate how it would naturally appreciate. And if Trump continues how he does, that basically the Swiss franc will appreciate a lot more than it is already.
By the way, this again, they do it because of what you've once explained to me about Swiss being an export nation?
Yeah, correct.
So can you maybe share the logic of that for those who aren't familiar? Like, why actually, this actually means that there's a motive for the Swiss government, in a way, to keep suppressing how good the Swiss franc actually is, which, at least for me, for the first time when I was told about it, it was kind of funny in a way.
Yeah.
But
I mean, TLDR, right? Switzerland is an export nation. Switzerland is one of the strongest currencies right now. So Switzerland has this issue that it needs to be very nichey. It cannot compete on things which are price sensitive. And that's why in Switzerland you have biotech, robotics, or machinery, like precision machinery, being the biggest export markets. But even so, it is a problem. If the Swiss franc appreciates more, then it becomes less competitive, or people cannot just not afford Swiss products anymore. And because of that, the Swiss National Bank has somewhat politically not a very strong incentive or not a strong interest to have an appreciating Swiss franc. and are kind of doing whatever they can to keep it low. I mean, we've seen that in you probably all heard of that. Where there was in between 20 I think 11 and 2014, there was the peg against the euro, which was at 120, where basically the Swiss National Bank said, okay, anyone who wants to buy Swiss franc against the euro can do so at 120. And we're basically going to buy whatever euros you have, and we're going to print more Swiss francs. And the interesting part is normally national banks do this to finance things. And not in the case of Switzerland. They basically just did it to keep the peg. And this led to this massive balance sheet the Swiss National Bank has right now, and which is invested in many things. So there is even these political discussions to turn the national bank into a Swiss sovereign state fund. But yeah, now we're back very deep in philosophy and like the history topic and political environment. That's not the idea of today's call. That's an interesting and fascinating thing I could talk about for hours.
Yeah, but I think that at least for those who are joining the community and really starting to appreciate the value of holding an asset pegged to the Swiss franc, I'd actually argue that this actually resonates with them, I'm pretty sure as well. I know that for me, on our first interview that we did back then on Leviathan News, once I actually started realizing the connection between the Swiss experience, like the Swiss situation, the Swiss perspective on how the world should work and how things should operate, and how the Swiss franc is actually a reflection of that. For me personally, it was a big trigger and I don't know, maybe for a Swiss person, like you, this is kind of clear and obvious, and you don't you just feel like it's repeating and not like the main point. But I think that because Frankencoin is actually a tool for people all around the world to be familiar with and actually enjoy the benefits of an asset pegged to the Swiss franc and tracking its value, I actually see a lot of benefits to mentioning this subject, and I'm sure that for our community, especially those who aren't from Switzerland, I actually think that probably like me, they see a lot of value in this as well. And I actually really enjoyed you mentioning the fact that the FPS governance system, especially with the veto design, I do agree. It also is much more similar to the Swiss way of doing things. And by the way, I actually do think that in many ways it is superior, because in so many of the protocols, even with the well-established ones, often you see big voters who are basically able to push whatever they want, and that limit is not the same when you look at Frankencoin. You don't have to have that much of a huge chunk of the voting power in order to really affect on how the protocol works. And especially when you also consider the delegation mechanism, in which small voters can actually delegate their voting power, and by the way, also with maintaining their own. So that's actually kind of nice, that you don't just delegate your voting power and then you don't have it any longer. You just it's like you create more voting power than there is. But again, this is this actually makes Frankencoin a much more resilient protocol, I would argue, than many others out there.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, that's really how it works, right? Yeah, we're already kind of running over time a bit, but please, if you have any questions, write them in the chats. Happy to address them if some more. There's one more thing I quickly want to touch base on. You might have seen it, right? We're actually also scaling the team. This the title day is Frankencoin is bigger or getting bigger. I think something like that. And yes, we're scaling our team. We're scaling our team on the BD side. We're looking for someone, Swiss based, who can work with us to work with big bag holders, big asset holders, to bring interesting and secure and safe collaterals onto the Frankencoin ecosystem. We'll share. Can we actually share the QR code here? Probably can. Yes, we can. I'll just show a QR code very quickly about the job. If if you are interested, or if you are if you know someone.
What are the demands, Johannes? Like, who would you see as the optimal candidate for such a role?
I'm just going to write. The optimal candidate is someone who has a lot of experience on the BD side, who has a very good network with family offices, asset holders, who knows how this game works, how the business development works, and who also understands what is an RWA, what is a token, who has had some touch points with the decentralized world, and is obviously very much aligned with our vision of building a decentralized Swiss franc.
Very cool. And
So-
basically, like, the main point is to just get more people and entities minting ZCHF, and because it's not just about the types of collateral, it's also being able to close deals, I guess, and actually enjoy to bring in actual capital. Hopefully one that is already acceptable as collateral within the Frankencoin system, and just get more and more Frankencoins out there.
Exactly. So a very nice comment here. Yes, it's a very good opportunity to impact the Frankencoin growth. Michael, yeah, thank you so much for that comment. It's exactly it, right? It's the next step of building this decentralized system. But in the end, you as the community, you're making this up. You're making part of it. We as the association, we're just a steward. We're just on the sidelines, cheering on it, right? Helping it grow, but not being the owner, not controlling the whole thing, but just kind of, we believe that this is something Switzerland needs, and this is something we want to help build.
I'd actually just add before we wrap it up that I think it's something the world needs. So I don't think.
Oh, the world need. Yeah, it's a better way of putting it. Actually, something the world needs, and
yeah. I always say that for me, for someone who I wouldn't know how to get exposure to an asset, to the Swiss francs themselves myself, and with something like Frankencoin, I actually feel, especially in times like these, man, I'm just benefiting from its existence, let alone being a part of the Frankencoin Association, thankfully, and participating in the journey. So, guys, if you're interested and you think that you can contribute in any way, and especially in this new up for grabs business development position of onboarding collateral, you need to be Swiss-based for this one.
Optimally, yes.
By the way, preferably an English and German speaker for all the kind of stuff that you will need.
French and Italian a big plus, as usual in Switzerland.
As always. Not only
exactly.
in Switzerland, by the way, not only in Switzerland. And guys, go ahead, reach out to Johannes or to myself in the community. Go to our Telegram community. That's basically the best place to connect. Let me just pop up our links again of subscribing to the YouTube channel. Follow us on X as well at Frankencoin ZCHF, and also join the Telegram group at t.me Frankencoin ZCHF. Anything else you want to add, Johannes, before we wrap it up? And thank you so much for your time, sir. Really enjoyed this one, and I really think that there's a lot of value in doing these. And thank you for everyone for tuning in. Please like the video, subscribe, follow us on the channel, and come to the community. Any final message for this week, Johannes?
I mean, as usual, thank you all very much for being part of this community. It's you who are that protocol. I very much enjoy my job I have. I very much enjoy working with you all, and I hope to see you all soon. And have a great night, or wherever you are in the world, a great morning or a great afternoon.
And have a good one, everyone.
Have a